Saurav, I was going through your social media post the other day, right? Basically on LinkedIn, and I saw one of your posts wherein you had shared about your learnings from your experience, right? And this second last point I still remember was that basically you cultivate the next generation leaders, and one should make themselves replaceable, right? That's what you mentioned as one of your learning from the experience. But if we see the scenario right now, correct, at least a year back, we have seen this rough patch in the industry, IT industries, so much of recession going on. And still it is partially existing maybe somewhere, some part of the world. Most of the people who have not been laid off, they have this advice that, create an impact in the company and also make yourself irreplaceable so that you don't fear losing the job and you're able to, survive the layoff without, you just don't get laid off. Then what do you have to say on that?
I think this is one of the most difficult question to answer, but and it's very hard to digest also, right? And because that is not the natural or normal thing that we generally see in the companies, right? Most of the people generally want to make impact and stick to their role because that is the most comfortable zone for them. Like being the part of a team and then being there for 4 or 5 years, you will be most comfortable, right? But again, as I said, that environment is very dynamic, and that boils down to very interesting social media debates like leadership versus management, right? So how
Yeah.
managers are different versus leaders. So if you simply search Google for manager versus leader, you will get a lot of posts about it. And
Yeah.
just put it briefly, managers are someone who who build their assets or resources as their employee, and they generally controls that resources, right? Versus the leader who works in more collaborative environment, who foster the culture of growth, who work collaboratively, who make sure that not just him, his team is also growing along with him, right? So that is the difference between manager and manager. Manager sounds like a more selfish role. It might sound bad, but it is what it is, right? That sounds more like
Yeah.
a selfish role versus leader who lead from the front. The aim
Yeah.
is to make sure that not just he grows, but his whole team grows. And obviously, that comes with a lot of responsibility that you absorb the criticism, share the success, etc. Right? You must have read in my social media post. So why I said that you should make yourself replaceable, because ultimately, while working on a lot of stories that you do within your company or within your team, lot of business stories, tech stories, whatever it is, ultimately you will be doing that thing along with the collaboration with the other folks in the team, right? So ultimately that will, as a leader, what you will be doing, you will be taking the buy-ins of other teammates, right? By buy-ins I mean you are making sure they are convinced, they are on the same page, right? Versus managers who are simply saying this is what we need to do and please go and execute, right? But the leaders do not operate in that way. They do make sure that people in their team are on the same page. They understand the why part of the problem rather than just the what and how part of it. So when they understand why, they contribute to the solutioning as well, right? And that becomes very interesting. At least for me, when I was doing things, I always used to make sure that everyone in the team knows why we are doing it, right? And when you explain that why, and that's where the communication is also very important. When you explain them why, then they become very interesting. They become very interested about how we are going to solve it and what is the solution for that, right? And that in that way, when you see, so again, there's a manager versus leader. The leaders are generally, they don't have fragile ego. That is a very interesting line that even the CEO of the company in our company uses that. As a leader, you can't have the fragile ego. By fragile ego, what I mean is that you can't always think that you are the right? You have to take the feedbacks from other as well. There might be cases that in your team you might not be expert in everything, right? There might be experts who thinks well, whose product thinking is better than you, right? Whose technological skills are better than, probably you might not be expert in databases. You might be expert in, probably, let's say, microservices, but not expert in data. Someone in your team is more knowledgeable about, let's say, Cassandra or DynamoDB, but you might not be that knowledgeable about. Someone in your team might be good in Elasticsearch or Solar, and you might not be that good in those technologies. Then you have to accept it, right? that
Yeah.
that person is better than me. His solution or his suggestions might be more valuable than my solution, right? So that's where the leadership is key, that you accept the fact that you are not the only one, and you are not expected to be the best one in the team, right? So ultimately, when that process happens, what happens is you identify certain folks or one of the folks in your team who is capable of actually taking up the charge of that role, because ultimately your thinking in a particular team becomes stagnant, right? So you start, you need a fresh perspective. And technically every engineer is creative. By certain amount they are creative, right? They can think, they have a logical thinking for sure. Ultimately whatever you code or whatever solution that you build, you need some sort of creativity. And when you are in the process of like finding the solution of a problem in hand, you will realize that there are people who are either equally at par capable of what you are doing, or sometimes there might be people who are more capable of what you are doing. And ultimately your impact within the companies, within that particular team, is going to be stagnant. And that is the bad shape to be in, because if you are not creating an impact and someone from outside sees that you along with your other teammates, and you are technically redundant for that particular team, then that is a bad shape. Then there is a higher chance that you will get laid off, right? Versus you find this fact that I am now redundant for the team. There are folks in the team who can take the responsibility. I should rather go and find a different opportunity within the organization, because a company like Zomato, in fact, other startups, very easy to get switch your role within the company, like within a different project or within a different departments altogether. Some people go from engineering to product as well, right? So that is very common nowadays, and that is generally possible in a startup only. You can't go from engineering to product in companies like Facebook or Google. That might be a very challenging shift in those companies, but in startups it's pretty normal. People do try product management from the engineering things and all that. So at some time you might realize that the current role is stagnant, you are not making that impact, someone in the current team is capable of doing what you are doing. It's the right time that you like raise that person as a leader and take the next charge. And trust me, that ultimately makes you more respectable in the company. Like, people start respecting you more. And when you see in the past, you realize that okay, I built these products, and they are doing good. So ultimately, that is a better feeling than being stuck in a particular role, ultimately limiting your impact within the company, being only known for that particular product versus impact in multiple product, multiple directions, and being known for multiple things. Which is the better state that you think, right? I guess the second one is the better state. That is the reason I said make yourself by replaceable. I mean, find your replacement at the next generation of leader, rather than like letting yourself go from the, I'm not talking about letting yourself go from the company. I'm talking about creating leader out of your team. And that is one of the core responsibility of leader as well, right? Leadership is all about creating next generation of leader, because ultimately you will either leave that particular role, or you will probably leave the company. Then what will happen to that particular product? Someone has to take that charge, right? And when I talk to anyone in the company and he's, let's say, handling a particular team, I generally let's say they have spent 4 or 5 years in that particular product, I simply ask the question, who after you, right? And sometimes they don't really answer. Sometimes people even say that I don't have any single person in my team who can take the charge of that, but these two person can take the charge of that. These are fuzzy and wrong answers, I guess. Being in a team for 4 or 5 years, if you have not cultivated enough the people that they can take the charge of leadership, then that is your failure. You have not grown them. You have not made them. Even their growth is important, right? If you are growing, then their growth is also, and that was the leadership is, right? Then you will have to actually leave that place, because if someone is growing, then you will also. It is very important. Generally, what some companies makes the mistake is that the leader goes, someone else from the outside come and join the team, right? That might work sometimes, but this is very important that the leader should be from the within the team, because there is a context attached to the every problem, right? And I think context is king. It takes some time to get into in that shape only. I have seen unsuccessful people coming from outside trying to be at least at par to the previous leader, but they are unsuccessful first because there is no respect. There is no inherent respect, because that takes some time. And also there is some sort of anger also, why someone else came and take the charge, why we are not capable of doing that, right? So that is something which ultimately comes into the bad shape. I will rather prefer that someone from within the team should take the charge of leadership, and that is what replacement I was talking about.
Oh goodness. I just love your thought process. I mean, the other day when I was going through LinkedIn post, also it was reflecting the type of content you give over there, and now this explanation. And actually, if you're raising other leaders, this actually reflects on you, like such a good leader you are, right? And of course, definitely, then you're creating an impact. So it actually reflects the type of person you are and such a responsible person. And no explanation could be better than one that you just gave right now. So thank you so much for that.